It's D-U-E-U tell. I see you by this point, you're reading my mind. It's time for football. We about to keep this thing moving. I'm about it, you're with it, let's do it. We gon' make this thing official, you heard me? If you're the best, then let's prove it. The goal is set to have a team become a unit, man. We about to keep this thing moving. I'm about it, you're with it, let's do it. We gon' make this thing official, you heard me? If you're the best, then let's prove it. The goal is set to have a team become a unit, yeah.
Welcome to Football Game Plan's NFL All 32 show. I am Emery Hunt, the czar of the playbook, and today will be all about the Minnesota Vikings as we start to preview the upcoming 2021 NFL season. We'll take a look at some training camp quick hits, some reasons for optimism, as well as causes for concern. But first, we'll take a look at some of the key storylines heading into the Vikings season as we go into our 4-minute offense. Mike Zimmer called his defense a bad one last season, and he wasn't lying one bit. This unit finished 27th in total defense, 29th in points allowed, giving up 29.7 points per game. However, there were some legitimate reasons for that drop-off. This team had a combination of COVID-19 opt-outs affect the defensive line, and injuries run through the second and third levels of their defense. They were a shell of themselves as a defense and was very thin in key spots. Now, fast forward to this season, and you have the return of guys like Danielle Hunter, Michael Pierce, Anthony Barr, Eric Kendricks, along with free agent signees like Patrick Peterson, Sheldon Richardson, and Mackenzie Alexander. So it is safe to say that we won't see that same quote-unquote bad defense in 2021. What a rookie season for Justin Jefferson last year. He led the team in both receptions with 88 and yards with 1,400 and scored 7 touchdowns. He became their big play threat and a nice replacement for Stephon Diggs, who's now with the Buffalo Bills. Most rookie wide receivers take a little bit of time before breaking out, but Jefferson was able to do this instantly, showing the ability to play across the board, making the difficult catch look routine. What he can do for an encore this season, well, with the expected improvement up front along the offensive line and within the versatility of his game, one should expect more of the same from number 18. Minnesota wanted to get stronger at the point of attack this offseason, making moves to strengthen both the offensive and defensive lines. Offensively speaking, bringing in first-round pick Christian Darrisaw out of Virginia Tech and third-round pick Wyatt Davis out of Ohio State should help accomplish that goal, as both are seen as plug-and-play guys up front. Defensively, just getting back a healthy Danielle Hunter almost instantly makes them a better defensive line. But in addition to that, they get back Michael Pierce, who was a free agent acquisition last year but opted out due to COVID, and they signed Delvin Tomlinson and Sheldon Richardson this year in free agency. Minnesota finished 5th in running the football and 27th in stopping it. I would expect both to improve this upcoming season. When the Vikings are really good, they tend to excel on special teams, and that wasn't the case last year as the kicking and return game both sputtered. Now, the hope is that kicker Greg Joseph can remedy the kicking problem, and an investment in the return game via the draft with Kene Nwangwu from Iowa State, who is one of the top kickoff returners in the country, and Amir Smith-Marset out of Iowa, who was also able to stake some claim to that title, will help bolster them in the return game. I feel like the return game will be better with those two additions, but the kicking part of it, you still have to take a wait-and-see approach and see what happens during training camp and into the preseason. Kirk Cousins, as usually, statistically was strong last season, completing 67% of his passes for over 4,200 yards, 35 touchdowns to only 13 interceptions. He was actually strong down the stretch last year. His last 3 years in Minnesota statistically have been excellent, but there's always something about his game that leaves you wanting a little bit more, and a lot of his statistical success can be viewed as empty calories, so to speak. Now, the Vikings don't want to fully come out and say that he's on the hot seat, but they wanted to add some additional motivation, so to speak, to the position by drafting Kellen Mond out of Texas A&M in the 3rd round. Now, Mond played a lot of football at A&M, and to be completely honest, he carries sort of the same stigma as Cousins does, in the sense that there's just something about his game that keeps you from going all in. But he's coming off of a stellar career and Senior Bowl where he was the MVP, and at worst gives them a better option at QB2 than in recent memory since Cousins became their starting quarterback. What a season Dalvin Cook had in 2020. He finished with 1,557 yards rushing and scored 16 rushing touchdowns, averaging 111.2 yards a game. That's just flat out dominant from the position despite missing 2 games. It was his second consecutive 1,100 yard plus season and his second consecutive double-digit rushing touchdown season. So He's starting to hit his groove as a runner, becoming a true centerpiece to this offense. The Vikings have strong depth behind him with Alexander Madison and Amir Abdullah, and fullback CJ Ham continues to be one of the best fullbacks in the NFL and is an integral part of the run game being as successful as it has been. Both Justin Jefferson and Adam Thielen had really strong seasons, as Thielen finished with 14 touchdown receptions and just under 1,000 yards receiving. I feel like both will cross that 1,000 yard barrier this year, and that's the way the Vikings passing game is set up to be. If we're being completely honest, that third option is usually the tight end or the running back, but guys like BC Johnson and Chad Beebe do give them some solid options within that role. But I would also keep an eye out for both rookies, Amir Smith-Marset out of Iowa and undrafted rookie free agent Whop Philyor out of Indiana, to make a play for slot duties as well. Tight end is a pretty strong group despite losing Kyle Rudolph in free agency. Irv Smith Jr. was drafted 3 years ago for a reason, and he now takes over as the tight end one within this offense. He finished third in receiving last year and should have a stranglehold on that role. Tyler Conklin gives them a solid number 2 option that can get vertical, and they added another prospect in the 5th round this year in Zach Davidson out of Central Missouri, whose game is very similar to that of Tyler Conklin, giving them yet another stretch vertical option at the position. Blocking for all three will be key, as that's an area where Rudolph excelled and one that's still a question mark, so to speak, for these 3 guys. In the draft, the Vikings added offensive tackle Christian Darrisaw out of Virginia Tech and guard Wyatt Davis from Ohio State, as both were highly regarded prospects that should help strengthen the unit that showed improvement down the stretch of the season. Darrisaw is expected to be their starting left tackle, while Davis will more than likely take over for Dakota Dozier at right guard. Adding those two with the progress that we saw last season from Ezra Cleveland, along with right tackle Brian O'Neill, gives them a strong core up front. Now, center Garrett Bradbury, who I still like, has been steady, but is still looking to make that jump into the Pro Bowl type category, as he was their first round pick 3 years ago. Rashad Hill, Mason Cole, Drew Samia, they give them veteran depth, and the team wants to see Ali Udoh, Blake Brandel, and Kyle Hinton, the latter 2 are second-year players, make strides in their games. There's excitement up front defensively because of the return of Danielle Hunter. This group could not find a quarterback last year, as they finished 28th in sacks last season with only 23. Now, getting Hunter back and bringing back Stephen Weatherly in free agency gives them familiarity on the edges. Rookies Patrick Jones II out of Pitt and Janarius Robinson out of Florida State are expected to be the next in line with regards to pass rushing, with Jones pushing for significant minutes early in his career, as he was one of the top edge rushers in the ACC. DJ Wanham and Jalen Holmes also add depth to that rotation. Now, on the interior, getting Michael Pierce from the COVID opt-out and the signings of both Delvin Tomlinson and Sheldon Richardson in free agency makes them a better interior defense that'll be capable of both stopping the run and also collapsing the pocket. Now, after a tumultuous offseason, who knows what type of impact rookie Jalen Twyman will have out of Pitt. He's got the pass rushing chops, but will more than likely end up taking a bit of a redshirt season. Second-year player James Lynch and third-year player Armon Watts will give them good depth on the inside. Another position where health is a welcome addition is at linebacker, as both Anthony Barr and Eric Kendricks missed a bevy of games last year, with Barr essentially missing the entire season. They are so effective at the second level because they can keep them sound in coverage and also stellar versus the run. And I'm a big fan of rookie 3rd round pick Chaz Surratt out of North Carolina, who has the athleticism and the versatility to be a game day matchup piece within their defensive unit. He and Troy Dye, who earned some valuable starts last year as a rookie, really help increase the athleticism here at the second level. And we'll see if Ryan Connolly can regain the form that he showed as a rookie with the Giants, where he earned the starting job, as he and free agent signing Nick Vigil will give them good veteran depth. Youth and inexperience plagued the secondary last year for the Vikings, but as we look toward 2021, that now turns into battle-tested and experienced vets. Jeff Gladney and Cam Dantzler started double-digit games last season for Minnesota as 1st and 3rd round picks respectively. Gladney's off-the-field concerns this offseason aside, the Vikings hope that he can find a consistency within his game to be a starter this upcoming year. Dantzler got better as the season went on and looks to be a mainstay opposite of free agent signee and future Hall of Famer Patrick Peterson, who still has a lot of game left to give, in my opinion. Former Viking Mackenzie Alexander was brought back after a season with the Bengals and will more than likely take over for Jeff Gladney inside. Another free agent signing in Bashad Breeland gives them a capable veteran that can start if need be. So Minnesota is never going to let that lack of depth be an issue once again, as they also signed Perry Nickerson and still have second-year players Harrison Hand and Chris Boyd providing good depth. Now at safety, Harrison Smith is still one of the league's best at the position and should be back to his playmaking ways with a more experienced group around him. The club signed Xavier Woods in free agency from Dallas to run co-pilot at this position, but I would keep an eye out for fourth-round pick Cam Bynum out of Cal, who was a top-tier cornerback prospect with ball skills and instincts and who now makes the transition to safety. He, at worst, gives them a very good, versatile matchup piece as their third safety. So Josh Metellus, Luther Kirk, who I still think is a solid matchup safety as well, and Miles Dorn will compete for depth at safety. One of the reasons for optimism for the Vikings is the fact that they can score. They were 11th in scoring last year at 26.9 points a game, with a lot of the same pieces returning on offense with an improved offensive line. There's no doubt that they can do that again. And they're getting key pieces back on defense. We've talked about this all show, and that alone gives you optimism that the defense will be much better in 2021. A cause for concern will be if those new pieces up front, we're talking about Christian Darrisaw and Wyatt Davis, if they don't gel quickly and help solidify this offensive line, it could be an issue. And on defense, if that secondary just doesn't improve with a year of seasoning, some new pieces back on the back end, if that just doesn't happen, then they could have the same problems going into this season that they'd had last season. Now let's take a look at some of our training camp quick hits, starting with camp surprises on both sides of the ball. I think people will be surprised at how talented Zach Davison is, the fifth-round pick out of Central Missouri. This guy can really get down the seam. He's going to be a matchup nightmare. Just needs a little bit more seasoning at the position, but he's going to surprise people with his raw talent. And keep an eye out for Dylan Mabin, who's an athletic, lengthy corner that has the fluidity to match up with many different wide receivers. He had his injury issues out there with the Raiders, but now with the full bill of health, people will start to see why he was such a premier prospect to come out that Fordham program. Rookie impact players, I look at Christian Darrisaw. He was my #1 offensive tackle prospect in the class. I think he's a plug-and-play guy up front that should star from day one. And Patrick Jones has a unique opportunity to step in and become that pass-rushing presence opposite of Danielle Hunter. I think he's going to really have a fantastic rookie year. X factors, we talked about it all show, it would be the offensive line. If that group with those two new rookies potentially starting up front can gel and help join those other three solid players, this offensive line could be one of the best in the division. And on defense, Danielle Hunter, getting him back is going to be huge for this defense. They missed him last year, missed his presence out there off the edge. I think coming back will determine how well this defense does as a whole. Looking at some breakout players, Irv Smith Jr. now is the #1 tight end in Minnesota, and I think he has a chance to really bust out this season and really take hold of that position that was held by Kyle Rudolph for so long. So look for Irv Smith Jr. to really bust out. And on the other side of the ball, Cam Dantzler, the second-year player out of Mississippi State, thrown into the fire as a rookie, had his ups and downs, but now with a full year of acclimation to the system, full year of game experience, look for him to flatline his game and build on top of that because he's super talented. The road to the Super Bowl for the Vikings goes as follows. If Zimmer's defense returns, and by Zimmer's defense, I'm talking about the normal way we usually see Mike Zimmer's defense play out there on the field. If that defense returns, they'll be just fine. If the second half of 2020 Kirk Cousins shows up, he was phenomenal the back end of the season. If that shows up throughout the rest of 2021 or the entire 2021 season, then the Vikings will be just fine. And finally, if the kicking game is able to solidify itself, both kicking game, punting with Colquitt, if he can have a bounce back season, and also if the return game can be better, all of those things have the Vikings getting into the playoffs and going deep all the way to LA for the Super Bowl. I have the Vikings finishing third in the NFC North. This is a very tight race, in my opinion, between the Bears and the Vikings. The Vikings have all the pieces on paper to make the run. There's just something about this unit, whether it's number 8 and trusting him to play like he did the back end of 2020, or a lot of moving parts on defense coming back, or new pieces that are added to the fold that you're hoping can gel together quickly and pick up either right where they left off or help advance this unit. So although I can see them with a winning record, maybe 9 wins or 10 wins, I just have them slightly behind the Chicago Bears for second place in the NFC North. So that's it for this edition of Football Game Plan's NFL All 32 show. I am Emory Hunt, the czar of the playbook. Be sure to follow me on all of my social media accounts. And don't forget to check out and subscribe to the Football Game Plan Network located at youtube.com/footballgameplan. Also subscribe on iTunes to Football Game Plan Podcast and leave us a 5-star rating.
It's E-U-E-U till I see you by this point. You're reading my mind. It's time for football. We about to keep this thing moving. I'm about it, you're with it. Let's do it. We gon' make this thing official. You heard me? If you're the best, then let's prove it. The goal is set to have a team become a unit. Man, we about to keep this thing moving. I'm about it, you're with it. Let's do it. We gon' make this thing official. You heard me? If you're the best, then let's prove it. The goal is set to have a team become a unit. Yeah.